Good morning, everyone. I am Mrs. Prerna Gupta, and I welcome you all back. And Chapter 7 is going on of Class 8 Subject Science, and Chapter 7 is Conservation of Plants and Animals. And this is the second part of the video. This is the second part of the chapter. Now, in the second part, we'll discuss about the topic that is conservation of forest and wildlife and biosphere reserves. So these are the topics which we are going to cover in the second part of the video. Now the first topic, that is conservation of forest and wildlife. Now conservation of forest and wildlife means to conserve forest and wildlife. There are different type of there are so many forests which is found, and wildlife is there inside the forest. So how these are going to be conserved? So for to conserve all forest and different life forms of wildlife, Indian government has taken several steps. Now see here, Government of India has taken certain initiatives in this respect, and has enacted laws to save the trees and the forest. So Indian government has taken initiative to protect the forest and wildlife, or you can say to conserve the forest and wildlife. Now the initiative, there are five things is given, that is 5 points is there. Wildlife Protection Act, that is 1972, that is started in 1972, that is Wildlife Protection Act. Then second one is Forest Conservation Act, that is started in 1980. And children, it is given on page number 101. And the third point is the Environment Protection Act, that is in the year 1986. Then National Biodiversity Strategy and Action Plan, that is started in the year 1999. And setting up of the National Biodiversity Authority, that is NBA, to look after the conservation of wildlife. So these are the initiatives which is taken by the Indian government to protect, or you can say for to conserve the forest and wildlife. These are the initiative which is taken by the Indian government. Now further, if we'll talk about in conservation measures to conserve forest and wildlife, there are different measures also taken by the Indian government for to protect the wildlife and for to conserve the forest. That is, first one is what? Stop cutting of trees. First of all, cutting of trees should be stopped. This is the first measure. Second, cutting or felling of a tree even with permission from the authority is conditional. अगर किसी को permission भी मिलती है, then also it is conditional. It is not you can say easily available. It is conditional, but entirely if we'll say it is strictly prohibited. Then third point is what? Reforestation or afforestation should be done. So afforestation means right now I've told you all कि afforestation means क्या होता है? Planting of trees should be done, and reforestation means होता है जहाँ पे ट्रीज कट चुके हैं, लैंड बैरन है, तो उस एरिया को छोड़ दिया जाता है जहाँ पे कि वो ट्रीज अपने आप फिर से रीग्रोथ हो जाए. तो reforestation and afforestation both should be checked. Both measures should be done. Then planting of more trees should be encouraged. It means one man one tree. मतलब प्लांटिंग ऑफ ट्रीज को ज़्यादा से ज़्यादा इंक्रीज करना चाहिए. फॉर एग्जाम्पल, वन मैन वन ट्री मीन्स एक पर्सन को एक ट्री एटलीस्ट लगाना चाहिए. तो दिस मेजर शुड बी टेकन. द नेक्स्ट वन इज व्हाट? नेचुरल हैबिटेट ऑफ द वाइल्ड लाइफ टू बी प्रोटेक्टेड. वाइल्ड लाइफ का जो भी नेचुरल हैबिटेट होता है, जहाँ पे भी रहते हैं फॉरेस्ट में वाइल्ड लाइफ, तो वहाँ पे क्या होना चाहिए? उनका नेचुरल हैबिटेट को प्रोटेक्ट करना चाहिए. द नेक्स्ट वन इज व्हाट? टोटल बैन ऑन हंटिंग एंड पोचिंग ऑफ एनिमल्स. जितने भी एनिमल्स की हंटिंग होती है या पोचिंग होती है, तो इट शुड बी टोटली बैंड बाय द इंडियन गवर्नमेंट. The last one is what? Natural habitats of our flora and fauna should be preserved by establishing protected areas such as sanctuaries, national parks and biosphere reserves. जो भी natural flora and fauna वाला flora and fauna in the first part of the video, as I have told you, flora and fauna means क्या होता है? Flora means natural area जहाँ पे plant grow करते हैं of similar characteristics, that is flora. And natural habitat जहाँ पे animals रहते हैं of similar characteristics, that is called the fauna. तो इसको क्या करना चाहिए, इट शुड बी प्रिजर्व्ड बाय मेकिंग द नेशनल पार्क, सेंचुरीज एंड बायोस्फीयर रिजर्व्स. तो दीज आर द टाइप्स ऑफ मेजर्स which can be taken to protect, or you can say to conserve the wildlife and the forest. Hope this much is clear. Now the next one is the biosphere reserves. Biosphere reserves are the areas meant for conservation of biodiversity. Biosphere reserves means this is the type of area which is meant to conserve the biodiversity. Biodiversity को conserve करने के लिए biosphere बनाना चाहिए, right? तो biosphere reserve is divided into three parts. See here, I have drawn the innermost part. This part is called the protected zone. This innermost part is given by the name that is the protected zone. It should be totally prohibited by the human, or you can say totally prohibited by everyone. Human activities in this zone is totally prohibited. So this zone is totally prohibited. This zone is called the protected zone. And after this, the next type of zone, that is called the buffer zone. तो buffer zone is the area जहाँ पे गवर्नमेंट प्लान करती है कि यहाँ पे डेंस फॉरेस्ट, मतलब जो यहाँ पे ढेर सारे प्लांट्स को ग्रो करेंगे, सो दैट इट विल बी लुक लाइक अ डेंस फॉरेस्ट, राइट. अगेन दिस एरिया इज स्ट्रिक्टली प्रोहिबिटेड. देन द लास्ट एरिया इज कॉल्ड द नर्सरी जोन. नर्सरी जोन में saplings of plant is grown. Saplings को grow करते हैं, and this can be shown by the tourist so that people can be aware of the nursery zone, right? So nursery zone is the area where the saplings is grown, and it is shown by the tourist so that people can be aware about the nursery zone. So these are the three types of zone, that is protected zone, buffer zone and nursery zone, which comes under the biosphere reserves. Hope I am clear to you all, everyone. Now the next topic, that is endemic species and the exotic species. Now see here, endemic species means what are exclusively found in a particular area. Endemic species of plants and animals remain confined to particular area and are not found naturally anywhere. जो एंडेमिक स्पीसीज होते हैं वो पर्टिकुलर जो इनका एरिया होता है, दे आर फाउंड ओनली इन दैट पर्टिकुलर एरिया. अदरवाइज धीरे धीरे क्या हो रहे हैं, ख़त्म होते जा रहे हैं. एंड द exotic species are introduced in a new region either by men or exceptional natural means. और जो exotic species होती है इसको इंट्रोड्यूस किया जाता है पर्टिकुलर किसी एरिया में by the human activity or by some natural means. So these are the two things, that is endemic species and the exotic species. Hope this much is clear. Okay, the next topic, that is the wildlife sanctuary and the national parks. Now what is wildlife sanctuary? Wildlife sanctuary is maintained is to provide protection and suitable living conditions to wild animals in their natural habitat. तो वाइल्ड लाइफ सेंचुरीज क्या होती है? वाइल्ड लाइफ सेंचुरीज बनाई गई है जिससे कि जो वाइल्ड लाइफ एनिमल्स होते हैं उनको प्रॉपर उनको नेचुरल हैबिटेट जैसा एरिया लगे और वो उसमें अपनी लाइफ को ईजिली प्रोटेक्टेड होके रह सके. तो दिस कम्स अंडर द वाइल्ड लाइफ सेंचुरी सुटेबल. नेक्स्ट वन इज द नेशनल पार्क्स. National parks are to protect all kinds of plants endemic to that area along with the natural fauna of the place. तो अगेन यहाँ पे नेशनल पार्क्स भी बनाए गए हैं जिससे कि जो पर्टिकुलर टाइप के प्लांट्स हैं उसको वहाँ पे उस पर्टिकुलर एरिया में ग्रो किया जा सके, अच्छे से रखा जा सके. तो वाइल्ड लाइफ सेंचुरी एंड नेशनल पार्क्स इज मेंट फॉर द, you can say, wildlife for animals and national parks for plants, so that plants and animals both can be survived with protection. So these wildlife sanctuaries and national parks is made for survival of plants and animals and for the protection also for wildlife and animals. Now see here, biosphere reserves, national parks and wildlife sanctuaries are being maintained in India to protect endemic species of plants and animals. So now biosphere reserves is also nowadays Indian government is also giving emphasis for to make the biosphere reserves and the national parks and wildlife sanctuaries are being maintained in India to protect endemic species of plants and animals, of different type of plants and animals. So now, children, I hope this much is clear to you all. Thank you and have a nice day. And keep on revising.